This is DW News live from Berlin. A new sea corridor to bring desperately needed aid to Gaza. The open arms supply vessel is cleared to sail, carrying humanitarian supplies from Cyprus. Our correspondent reports from inside the control room at the port of Larnaca. Voting closes in Portugal, with the far right set to make election gains. Corruption scandals have dented support for mainstream parties. Hello, I'm Tomi Oladipo. Welcome to the program. A ship loaded with humanitarian aid has been given the all-clear to set sail from Cyprus to Gaza. The open arms supply vessel is expected to leave the port of Larnaca any moment now, carrying 200 tons of rice, flour and proteins to Gaza. The charity World Central Kitchen is providing the assistance. It'll take the vessel an estimated 60 hours to reach Gaza once it sets sail, using a newly established maritime aid corridor. Our correspondent Rosie Burchard is in Larnaca, Cyprus, where that shipment of aid is expected to depart anytime now.
We're at a special operations hub in the city of Larnaca, where Cypriot officials are able to track and look at this new maritime corridor, which is now really starting from here in the city of Larnaca, so that aid boats can reach Gaza safely. And that much-needed maiden voyage, we understand, should be setting off very soon. So in this room around me, you'll see there are cameras where officials can monitor what's happening at the port. We also see, for example, lots of maps that shows the area where Cypriot officials could deploy, for example, search and rescue vessels if this ship were to get into distress. Now, I've been speaking with Cypriot officials. I've got the very latest from them. Take a listen to what they had to say.
We have finished the inspection and loading of the vessel, of the open arms vessel, and the platform they are using. So the most important part is that everything is ready, permissions have been granted, and now is a scheduling issue for the NGO that is handling this issue.
Rosie, just talking about the scheduling issue there, do we have an idea of the exact time when this is going to get the all clear?
In the coming hours, what I understand is that the NGO, which is preparing to receive this aid on the Gazan side, is still busy building its temporary pier in order to actually receive this. Now, this is a first-of-its-kind delivery. It's a delivery of tons, hundreds of tons, I've been told, of things like flour, of rice, of protein like canned tuna. And, of course, we know that is much needed in Gaza, where there really is a humanitarian disaster. And officials here are hoping they can ramp up this corridor over the next few weeks to see this voyage really seen as a test for trying to get this done. The idea is that Cypriot officials check the goods here in Cyprus, overseen by Israeli officials before it departs, so that they can go directly to Gaza. Now, we are, however, hearing from United Nations officials saying this maritime corridor, while it's welcome news, is no replacement for land access, and so those calls to increase access into Gaza via traditional land crossings are still mounting, particularly from the United Nations.
And Rosie, we're just looking there earlier as you were speaking to looking at live images of the vessel. There we have the images of the vessel. How long is it likely to take to get to its destination and deliver what these desperately needed aid?
So Cyprus is the point in the European Union which is the closest to Gaza, but it's still some 400 kilometres. So make no mistake, this is not an easy journey. And generally, this should take about 15 hours, so at least a full day of sailing. But given the fact that this boat is tugging a heavy cargo, it could be that that takes much longer, certainly into a couple of days. So this is no mean feat, and certainly something, as you can see, the eyes of Cypriot officials bearing down on this to try and make sure this works. Because, of course, as we know, really lives are at stake week here, the United Nations has been warning of famine in Gaza. I should say that Israel says it facilitates the access of aid. Israel has welcomed this initiative, although Israel has also faced criticism, particularly for NGOs, for what they say really is that lack of humanitarian access and how difficult it has been to get life-saving aid into the besieged territory.
As DW correspondent Rosie Burchard in Larnaca, Cyprus. Now, efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza before the start of Ramadan have stalled. War and hunger are overshadowing the eve of the Muslim holy month. Aid agencies say international efforts to ramp up deliveries of humanitarian supplies by air and now by sea are not effective enough.
In parts of Gaza, Ramadan decorations and food are still available, but not at prices most people can afford.
There are no jobs left, no water and no electricity. People are selling their belongings to live, and Ramadan is very hard on us.
For most Palestinians, food to break Ramadan's daily fasting will be hard to come by.
We rarely eat, whether it is Ramadan or not. And we always remain hungry.
In Rafah, parents are getting creative to help children celebrate.
Ramadan is very different this year. We're not in our homes, we're in tents, but we insisted on putting up decorations and celebrating. We just pray that by the end of Ramadan, we'll be in our homes.
Others find the fighting between Hamas and Israeli forces too much to bear. Children reportedly injured in an Israeli bombing are rushed to the hospital in the central Gaza Strip. Ongoing Israeli airstrikes are also taking a psychological toll.
We are tired, I swear. Please feel for us. Please, we want a ceasefire and an end to this. What do we have to say? We'd thank God for anything.
Without a ceasefire in time for Ramadan, and an Israeli ground assault into Rafah still a possibility, the suffering of ordinary Palestinians continues, without relief in sight.
Let's check in on some other stories making headlines around the world. NATO has begun its biggest exercises since the Cold War in the fjords of northern Norway. The alliance wants to send a message to Russia that member states are ready to defend each other. More than 20,000 troops from 13 nations are taking part in the drills. Germany's GDL train drivers union has announced another 24-hour strike on Tuesday. Talks with railway operator Deutsche Bahn management remain deadlocked. The sixth walkout in current negotiations is set to start at 2 a.m. local time for passenger services. Voting has closed in elections in Portugal. Exit polls show a shift to the right, as in other European nations in recent polls. Portugal's had 8 years of socialist rule, but the far-right party Chega is picking up significant support. Confidence in mainstream politicians has been dented by corruption scandals. DW's Jan-Philipp Schultz is in Lisbon for us. Jan-Philipp, the polling stations closing just minutes ago. Do we have early results?
Yes, according to first exit polls, it is a tight race between the ruling socialists and the center-right opposition, but it looks as if the center-right Democratic Alliance, the main opposition bloc, is a few percentage points ahead and could maybe form the next government. Also, the far-right populist party, the Chega party, they have gained quite considerably. They are at around 16 to 19%. This was predicted, but it's still a very strong result for the far right. There are also some good news. The participation of the voters, the voter turnout, seems to be quite high, but I have to stress again, those are just first exit poll projections here.
in that case, what do we expect do we see a kind of trend that could shape up for the new government?
Well, it will certainly be difficult to form a new government in Portugal. None of the major parties seem to have the necessary majority. So at the end, the far-right populist Chega party could become something like a kingmaker for the center-right bloc, even though a lot of politicians from the moderate center-right parties have stressed that they don't want to have a deal with Chega. But this could be the only option, maybe at the moment, if the country is not going to have fresh elections in a few months.
All right, we'll be waiting to see how that develops. Jan Philipp Scholz in Lisbon, thank you very much. Finally, Earthbound stars at the Oscars may have some competition. New images from the James Webb Space Telescope show the star-forming region called NGC 604. It's located in the Triangular Galaxy, nearly 3 million light-years from Earth. The James Webb Telescope allows astronomers to study star clusters in their early formation. Here on Earth, that's all we have time for, but coming up next after the break, Sports Life. And from myself and the team, thank you very much for watching.